Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about tech debt. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, would you say that paying down tech debts helps a new developer that joins the team to understand the code better? Yes and no. It depends on the nature of the tech debt that you are repaying. So one of the things that I really care about whenever I work in a software team is that I need to make sure, and this is assuming now that I'm not just like a software developer, I have a tech lead role or something like that, because when you do, like, I mean, if I'm just another software developer, then I might do it just because I think it's a good idea, but it's not necessarily something that I will push all that hard for. But when it comes to the tech lead role, I argue that one of the most important things that you can do is to sort of have a feel for where all the various software developers in your team are. So a philosophy that I push fairly hard is that in my teams when I run them, I say that everything in our team will work as a military unit or something similar to that. Whereas we all have specialities, and we were front end, back end, whatever you might be, right? But everybody should have a basic understanding of what the system is doing, like where are like most of the features, how they work, and things like that. Who are our stakeholders? Who are like what are the supporting systems and so forth? Because as I like to say, if I die or quit the job or something, yeah, that's probably less morbid. If I quit and I'm the person, or like even if it doesn't have to be me, if the most senior person on the team quits, you should be able to continue the mission or continue working and things like that. And so when I have tech debt stories or I have a new person joining the team, it doesn't have to be a junior software developer, it can be any software developer, because this basically is applicable to anybody who's new on the team. I have certain stories that I know that if they pick that story up, they will learn an important part of the system. It's actually one of the things that I argue is when you really want to do mob coding or pair programming or things like that. And because my philosophy is basically that you don't have to do it for every single little thing. But when you're dealing with things that are in some way giving you an insight into the main functionalities of the system, it's super important to do that. Very good example that makes it a little bit more concrete, I argue at the very least, is if you have external integrations to your system, which is very common in larger systems where you have different APIs that you're fetching data or pushing data or message queues or something like that that you're doing something with, right? So most of the time you will see that the person who made that integration, who were there at the time, they will have a fairly good understanding of the integration, and the people on the other side, the people who are maintaining the external system and so forth, that information is usually just stored in that person, which is very dangerous. It's one of the most common oversights I see in tech leads when they lead teams, that they basically create, without thinking about it, these silos of information, these people that are a little bit, as I like to say, too important for their own good. And so if that is the case, and I know that that person knows basically everything about, say, this third-party integration, and nobody else really knows it, then refactors and anything that is ugly within that area, I make very sure that somebody else is doing it. Because the person who wrote the code the first time, they already have the necessary domain knowledge in order to deal with this problem. And sure, it might have been faster for them to do a refactor or something like that, but the goal here is not to just do it as quickly as possible. It is to stabilize the knowledge and consolidate the knowledge within the team and spread the risk. That's the goal I go for. And so that is an example of tech debt that is really important for a new hire to get their hands on as quickly as humanly possible. Same thing for like core business entities and things like that, where you might, because usually in every system you have core business entities, you have like these, as I like to say, like main backbone features. Like, let's say for the sake of argument that you're dealing with a retailing system, well then anything related to how to upload and like publish products to the system, everything related to how to like buy a product or something like that, on if it's an e-commerce site or something, anything in that area is what we call core business, because that is, or backbone features, because that is basically what the entire system is there to do. There's probably a lot of features. I mean, your big retailing sites, and doesn't have to be retail, can be any system. Usually you have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of various features depending on how big the system is. So that's basically impossible to get everybody on board on very, in the early stages. That's something that they're going to learn over quite some time. But the thing that I reserve, as I said, the tech debt that I reserve is within those sorts of areas. And I tailor every single refactor in order to make sure that the refactor brings some type of value, because usually, especially if it's a new hire or so forth, it's basically free. I pitch this to my managers. I say it will take them some time to get up to speed. It doesn't matter if this is like a senior of 20 years. They're not going to be able to just jump in and start producing code. Well, some of them are able to do that, which is pretty impressive when they can do that. Like people who are really good at just getting their hands dirty very quickly. But most people will take some time to just investigate and things like that. And they're trying to learn the system usually for the first few weeks, few months, depending on how junior and so forth, like varying degrees of learning is necessary here, right? And so that's why I can pitch this as basically free. It's free education. You're getting tech debt paid back, and you're not in any way really, because that's the beautiful thing about a refactor. Depending on the refactor, it can be fairly straightforward. So I try to keep them away from refactors that are, a classic one. Yes, you migrate all the database schemas to another format, or you go and fix this very intricate, detailed part of the system that is super spider webby or something like that, and just structure it in a nice logical fashion. These are too complicated things. You really need to basically understand the whole system, more or less, or a very large part of the grander scheme of things to do that efficiently. But the API integration that I was talking about, refactoring that into a nicer client system, adding some documentation, making sure that we have contact details, like these minor things, they are perfect. Because they're low complexity, so it's easy for them to execute even if they're unfamiliar with the system. But it's also high value, both for the sake of us as a team, because basically now the code is going to get a little bit nicer. But the second part is that we spread our risk, so that now that new person who's coming in actually also knows how to deal with something that is very important. That as I said, not one person knowing everything is really, really dangerous, because you don't want. I've seen it before, guys. It's probably going to continue happening. Classic, wrong person leaves, and now everything goes to shit because that person left. And in some cases, I've seen it more than once. They hire back, like they fire someone and then they hire them back again, because basically they can't sustain their system without that person. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, paying back tech debt is a really good way to onboard new developers or help them learn the system. But as I said, it depends on the nature of the tech debt. The beautiful part about refactors and things like that, depending on the style of refactor, is that it's very easy for someone to come in fairly new to the product and execute effectively. It's not as I call like core business type of things where it's very intricate domain knowledge that is necessary to execute effectively on it. So I try to, and this is what I do. It doesn't matter if it's a junior all the way up to a senior. I do the same thing every single time. I put usually people on things that I know are low complexity, but also has value, of course. And refactors is an example of that. And so the refactors that they get is usually very much tailored toward one thing only. Bring some nice to have benefit to the team, because we can't expect too much too early, but primarily it's about them getting to learn the big parts of the system, the backbone features, the big pieces, so to speak. Every single little feature, they're going to learn that over months and weeks and years and so forth, depending on how much they work and so forth. And no team is perfectly balanced where everybody knows exactly everything about everything. That's never going to happen. But the main stuff, the stuff that is like completely business critical, it's the bulk of what everything is about, that everybody should know. And that's why I reserve tech debt related things and stuff like that to make sure that if someone's going to work on that thing, and if everybody knows it perfectly fine, you just go and do it. Just do it by yourself. If not everybody is 100% sure how that thing works, you do a pair programming session or you do a mob coding session, and that is practically the only time I push for those sorts of initiatives. Because if it's something everybody knows, then it doesn't really matter. But if it's something you're going to do that will help others understand more parts of the system, that's really important that you do that together. Have a great day.